Miss those African-American lunches from the 1970s we all want back? They packed school trays and church halls with bold flavor and family pride. What's stopping us from bringing that taste of the 70s home again? Collard green and smoked turkey sandwiches were the kind of meal that could keep you full through an afternoon shift and still taste like something made with care at home. Tender greens, slow-cooked with onion, and a touch of vinegar gave each bite a soft tang that balanced the rich smokiness of turkey left to simmer for hours. The sandwich bread was always fresh from a local bakery or a neighbor's oven, and many families would wrap these in wax paper for easy carrying to school or work. In the 1970s, these sandwiches traveled to church picnics, jazz festivals, and union lunch breaks, bringing the same comfort wherever they went. They were not just leftovers pressed together, but a reflection of community cooking where every ingredient stretched to feed more than one plate. People often added a swipe of mustard or homemade hot sauce for an extra kick, though the core of the sandwich needed nothing but the steady flavor of greens and turkey to feel complete. Sweet potato and black-eyed pea patties turned ordinary pantry staples into a satisfying and protein-rich lunch that fit tight budgets. Mashed sweet potatoes brought natural sweetness and a gentle earthiness, while black-eyed peas added hearty texture and steady energy for the rest of the day. Cooks would mash the peas, fold them with finely chopped onion, a shake of paprika, and just enough flour to hold everything together before frying each patty until the edges crisped to a deep golden brown. They were often served with a spoonful of pepper vinegar or a drizzle of homemade hot sauce for a bright finish. These patties could be slipped into a soft roll for a sandwich or packed in foil to eat on their own during a midday break at work or after church. In the 1970s, kitchens across the South and Midwest, this dish stood as proof that frugality could still taste like a celebration and that simple vegetables could hold their own as the center of a meal. Cornbread crusted catfish fillets carried the essence of Friday fish fries straight into the lunch hour with a crunch that everyone in the neighborhood could hear. Fresh catfish fillets were seasoned with salt, black pepper, and a dusting of cayenne before being dredged in finely ground cornbread crumbs instead of plain cornmeal, which gave them a thicker, sweeter crust. The fillets were fried in cast-iron skillets until the coating turned a warm golden color and the inside stayed moist and flaky. Served between slices of soft white bread or alongside a scoop of slaw, these catfish pieces were as common at church gatherings as they were at family reunions. They were a reminder of the rivers and bayous that had long supplied African-American tables with fresh fish and a taste of home. In the 1970s, the aroma of frying catfish meant neighbors would drop by unannounced, drawn by the smell alone, ready to share stories and a plate without needing an invitation first. Okra and tomato stew with rice was the dependable pot of comfort simmering on many stovetops when the noon bell rang. Fresh okra pods thickened the stew naturally, while ripe tomatoes brought bright acidity that balanced the earthiness of onions, garlic, and bell pepper. A splash of homemade stock or even plain water was enough to create a rich broth once the vegetables released their juices. Served over a mound of steamed white rice, this dish carried the flavors of the Gullah Geechee coast into urban kitchens across the country. The gentle heat of cayenne or a pinch of smoked paprika added depth without overpowering the vegetables. Families loved it because it could feed many mouths from a single pot, staying warm for hours and tasting even better as the day went on. In the 1970s, it was common to see neighbors ladle generous helpings into bowls for visiting friends or for anyone who had come to lend a hand with household chores. Peanut butter and sorghum syrup sandwiches gave children a sweet reward that parents could still afford when sugar prices were climbing. Sorghum syrup, dark and rich with a subtle caramel note, spread smoothly over fresh bread and mingled with creamy peanut butter for a sticky treat that clung to fingers and hearts alike. This sandwich was packed into lunch pails headed for school buses and factory floors, offering long-lasting energy with ingredients that stayed fresh without refrigeration. Sorghum had deep roots in southern farming, and in the 1970s it remained a pantry staple for many African-American households that valued both tradition and thrift. The simple act of drizzling syrup over peanut butter turned a basic sandwich into something special, with each bite carrying a sweet depth far beyond plain jelly. Children traded halves with friends, and adults often sneaked a second sandwich for themselves, proof that the best lunches were not always the fanciest ones. Smoked sausage and cabbage skillet brought big flavor out of humble ingredients, creating a lunch that filled the kitchen with the aroma of hickory and spice. Thick slices of smoked pork sausage sizzled in a heavy skillet before ribbons of cabbage were added to the pan, soaking up every drop of savory fat. A handful of onions and a splash of cider vinegar brightened the dish and balanced the richness of the meat. Served over buttered rice or eaten straight from the skillet with crusty bread, it was a quick meal that required little more than a knife and a cutting board. In the 1970s, it became a favorite for workers coming home on a short break or for families needing a warm meal before heading back to afternoon chores. The combination of smoky meat and tender cabbage created a flavor that felt bigger than its parts and reminded everyone how satisfying a one-pan lunch could be when cooked with care and a little imagination. Field pea and rice pilaf turned a handful of pantry staples into a fragrant dish that could stand proudly on its own at the center of a midday table. Field peas were simmered until tender with garlic, bay leaf, and a touch of black pepper, then folded gently into long grain rice cooked in homemade stock. Chopped bell pepper and onion added color and sweetness, while a drizzle of olive oil gave the finished pilaf a light sheen. Families often made a large pot in the morning so it would be ready when children came home for lunch or when neighbors dropped by unannounced. The dish carried the legacy of West African rice traditions and proved that a meal did not need meat to feel hearty and complete. In the 1970s, it appeared at picnics, church gatherings, and everyday kitchens alike, earning its place as a beloved dish that tasted as good cold as it did warm. One pot, simple ingredients, lasting satisfaction. Red beans and rice with andouille filled kitchens with a slow, simmered aroma that promised comfort long before lunchtime arrived. Dry red beans soaked overnight were cooked with onions, celery, and bell peppers, known as the holy trinity of Creole cooking. Spicy andouille sausage lent a deep, smoky flavor that seasoned every grain of rice beneath the beans. Families often set a pot to cook in the morning so it would be ready when school and work breaks came, and the meal could easily stretch to feed whoever showed up hungry. In the 1970s, this dish served as a weekly ritual, often enjoyed on Mondays when leftovers from Sunday's dinner found new life in the pot. Served with a wedge of cornbread, it carried the traditions of Louisiana into kitchens from Chicago to Houston. Its balance of spice, warmth, and steady nourishment made it more than a meal. It was a shared experience of culture and community that everyone wanted back. Hot water. Cornbread sliders brought a playful twist to a Southern classic by turning humble fried cornbread into a handheld sandwich. The batter was made with boiling water poured over seasoned cornmeal, stirred until thick, and shaped into small patties that crisped beautifully in hot oil. Once golden, the cornbread rounds were split and stuffed with leftover greens, slices of smoked meat, or even a smear of homemade relish. These sliders became a clever way to stretch leftovers while delivering a satisfying crunch and warm corn flavor in every bite. They were portable enough for school lunches, factory shifts, or church outings, and families loved how quickly they could be made with ingredients already on hand. In the 1970s, you could find them at potlucks or tucked into picnic baskets, where they stood out for both creativity and taste. Simple, filling, and full of history, these sliders proved that the best lunches often start with the simplest traditions made fresh again. Fried green tomato BLTs took a familiar diner sandwich and gave it a bright Southern character that no one forgot once they tasted it. Thick slices of firm green tomatoes were dredged in seasoned cornmeal and fried until the coating was crunchy and golden, while the inside stayed slightly tart. They replaced or joined the usual ripe tomato slices between layers of crisp lettuce and smoky bacon, turning a standard lunch into something with a spark of creativity. Mayonnaise or a homemade remoulade added a cool creaminess that balanced the heat of the skillet-fried tomatoes. These sandwiches were common in community cafes and roadside diners that dotted the South during the 1970s, where cooks knew how to stretch ingredients while keeping flavor bold. Packed into lunchboxes or wrapped in wax paper for road trips, they carried the scent of sizzling cornmeal long after they were made. Each bite captured a mix of crunch, smoke, and tang that called people back for another sandwich even when they thought one would be enough. Butterbean chowder brought a slow and gentle warmth to midday meals, offering creamy comfort from the first spoonful. Dried butter beans were soaked overnight, then simmered with onion, celery, and a careful sprinkle of smoked paprika that filled kitchens with a soft, woodsy aroma. A splash of milk or evaporated milk gave the broth its silky texture, while a handful of fresh herbs brightened the flavor without overwhelming the natural sweetness of the beans. In many neighborhoods, this chowder became a staple for workers heading home for a short lunch because it could be reheated without losing its rich taste. Families would cook a large pot early in the day so everyone could ladle out a bowl whenever hunger struck. Served with a slice of hot water cornbread or a simple biscuit, it satisfied without demanding expensive ingredients. The chowder proved that thrift and pleasure could share the same bowl and that a humble bean could anchor a meal worth remembering. Ham hock and collard soup cups were the kind of lunch that drew people from every direction the moment the aroma began drifting out of church basements and city markets. Collard greens simmered for hours with smoked ham hocks until the broth turned deep and flavorful, rich with a savory balance of salt and smoke. Volunteers would ladle the steaming soup into sturdy styrofoam cups that fit perfectly in a pair of hands, chilled by winter air. Each sip warmed the body and offered a taste of the kind of care that only long simmering can create. These cups of soup were inexpensive, filling, and easy to carry, making them a favorite at fundraisers where neighbors swapped stories while standing in line. In the 1970s, it was not unusual to see whole families gathered on the church lawn enjoying this simple comfort before heading back to work or school. It was food built from patience and generosity, a recipe that gave as much warmth to the spirit as it did to the stomach. Sweet potato and pecan salad brought a gentle sweetness to crowded potluck tables while keeping every bite refreshing and light. Cubes of roasted sweet potato were chilled and folded into a dressing made with homemade mayonnaise, apple cider vinegar, and a drizzle of local honey for brightness. Toasted pecans added a buttery crunch that played against the creamy dressing and the soft potatoes. Bits of celery and a touch of fresh parsley gave a faint herbal note that lifted the whole salad beyond the ordinary. This dish traveled well in big glass bowls wrapped with foil, making it perfect for church picnics, neighborhood reunions, and summer weddings. In the 1970s, it was a common sight at outdoor gatherings where cooks wanted something special yet practical to feed a crowd. Every forkful offered a balance of sweet, nutty, and tangy flavors that surprised anyone expecting a simple potato salad. It stood as a reminder that Southern cooks could transform familiar ingredients into something completely unexpected and deeply memorable. Catfish nuggets with corn relish turned community festivals into a feast of golden bites that everyone wanted to sample. Fresh catfish was cut into small chunks, seasoned with black pepper and a hint of cayenne, then dredged in cornmeal before a quick fry in hot oil. The nuggets came out crisp on the outside and tender inside, easy to eat with fingers while wandering through crowded fairgrounds. A bright corn relish made from sweet kernels, diced peppers, and a splash of cider vinegar offered a cool contrast to the hot fish. Vendors served the nuggets in paper trays lined with newspaper so the juices would soak in without making a mess. In the 1970s, these little pieces of fish were the highlight of summer gatherings across the South and Midwest, where the smell of frying catfish traveled down streets and drew neighbors from blocks away. They were inexpensive, full of flavor, and perfect for sharing, which made them more than just a snack. They became a social event all by themselves. Molasses glazed chicken wings gave lunch boxes and picnic tables a sticky sweetness that clung to every fingertip. The wings were marinated overnight in a blend of dark molasses, garlic, and a touch of ground mustard before being baked until the glaze turned glossy and caramelized. As they roasted, the molasses thickened into a deep amber coating that locked in the juices and perfumed the kitchen with a warm, almost smoky scent. Families packed these wings in foil for school lunches or road trips, where they stayed moist and flavorful even when served at room temperature. Children loved the candy-like glaze, while adults appreciated the subtle spice and satisfying chew. In many African American households of the 1970s, these wings became a dependable treat for church picnics and weekend outings, offering the perfect mix of frugality and indulgence. Eating them meant licking every finger clean and reaching for one more piece even when the basket seemed empty. A memory that lingers long after the last bite. Okra rice fritters turned leftover grains into a crisp and savory snack that doubled as a full lunch when paired with a simple salad. Cooked rice was mixed with chopped fresh okra, diced onions, and a pinch of cayenne before being shaped into small patties. The mixture sizzled in hot oil until each fritter formed a golden crust, while the inside stayed soft and slightly sticky. The okra's natural thickening power bound the ingredients together without needing extra eggs or flour. These fritters were a clever way to use what was already in the pantry, making them perfect for busy families and thrifty cooks alike. Served hot with a spoonful of pepper vinegar or a dab of mustard, they carried a satisfying bite that made even a small plate feel abundant. In the 1970s, they were common in kitchens where nothing was wasted, and every meal was a chance to turn simplicity into flavor. Each fritter proved that leftovers could shine brighter than the first meal. Barbecue turkey. Neck poboys were the sort of sandwich that could turn a quiet afternoon into a neighborhood event. Turkey necks were slow cooked over low heat until the meat slipped easily from the bone, then coated in a smoky, sweet barbecue sauce rich with molasses and vinegar. The meat was piled high on soft French bread that soaked up every drop of sauce, while a handful of crisp lettuce and sliced tomato added freshness. Vendors sold these sandwiches from street corners in New Orleans and from family-run cafes in cities across the South, and their popularity spread quickly through the 1970s. Each bite offered a perfect mix of tender meat, warm bread, and sauce that dripped down to your fingertips. Eating one demanded napkins and patience, but no one minded because the taste was worth every mess. They were affordable, filling, and unmistakably tied to the African-American lunch counters that defined the flavor of the decade. Carrot raisin sllo with pineapple added a bright splash of color to cafeteria trays and backyard tables while delivering a cool sweetness that cut through heavier dishes. Shredded carrots were tossed with plump raisins, crushed pineapple, and a dressing made of mayonnaise, lemon juice, and a hint of sugar for balance. The result was a crisp, juicy salad that stayed fresh for hours, making it ideal for long school days or outdoor gatherings. Children loved the natural sweetness, while adults enjoyed the subtle tang that made the sllo more interesting than a plain cabbage version. In the 1970s, it became a standard side at potlucks, especially when the summer heat called for something refreshing and easy to prepare. Many families mixed the ingredients in the morning and left the bowl chilling until lunchtime, knowing the flavors would only improve with time. This simple dish brought a welcome burst of color and a reminder that even everyday vegetables could feel festive when handled with care and creativity. Blackened shrimp lettuce wraps offered a fast and flavorful Gulf Coast lunch that felt light yet full of character. Fresh shrimp were coated with a bold mix of paprika, cayenne, garlic powder, and black pepper, then seared in a hot cast-iron skillet until the spices formed a smoky crust. Instead of bread, large, crisp lettuce leaves held the shrimp along with a spoonful of diced tomatoes and a drizzle of lemon butter, keeping the meal cool and refreshing. These wraps were perfect for hot afternoons when no one wanted to turn on the oven or sit down to a heavy plate of food. Street vendors in coastal towns often sold them wrapped in parchment for easy eating while walking near the water. In the 1970s, they represented a fresh take on seafood lunches, showing how tradition and innovation could meet in one simple dish. Every bite brought the taste of the ocean and the heat of southern spice, a combination that lingered pleasantly long after the last wrap disappeared. Sweet pepper and onion hoagies turned the aroma of a backyard garden into a hearty sandwich that could satisfy the hungriest appetite. Strips of red and green peppers were sautéed slowly in bacon fat until soft and slightly caramelized, then joined by sliced onions that absorbed every drop of smoky flavor. The mixture was piled onto crusty hoagie rolls still warm from the bakery and finished with a swipe of homemade mustard or a thin layer of melted cheese when families had some to spare. Each bite combined sweet vegetables and savory drippings in a way that tasted far richer than the short list of ingredients suggested. These hoagies were sold from small corner stores and food carts in city neighborhoods where the smell of sizzling peppers drew lines down the sidewalk. In the 1970s, they became a quick lunch for workers and students alike, proof that a simple sandwich could feel like a feast. People still talk about the scent that hung in the air long after the last pepper left the pan. Hoppin John salad turned a beloved New Year's tradition into a dish perfect for warm afternoons when a heavy meal would not do. Black-eyed peas were cooked until tender, then chilled and tossed with diced bell pepper, celery, and a gentle splash of apple cider vinegar that gave a bright tang. Cooked rice cooled alongside the peas and soaked up the dressing, making every spoonful light but still satisfying. Chopped green onions and a pinch of cayenne added a subtle kick that reminded everyone of the dish's southern roots. In the 1970s, families made large bowls early in the day so it would be cold and flavorful by lunchtime, perfect for picnics, school lunches, or quiet moments on shaded porches. It was a salad that balanced tradition and convenience, carrying the good luck symbolism of the original recipe into everyday life. A scoop of Hoppin John salad offered cool relief from summer heat while preserving the flavor of a classic that never felt out of season, no matter how high the sun climbed. Spicy mustard. Greens, flatbreads gave weekday lunches a burst of heat and a hint of smoky bitterness that only well-cooked greens can provide. Dough was mixed and rolled thin before being pan-griddled until small brown spots appeared, filling the kitchen with the aroma of warm wheat. Meanwhile, mustard greens were sautéed with garlic, onion, and crushed red pepper until tender but still vibrant in color. The greens were then tucked inside the flatbread and folded into a neat pocket that could be eaten on the move without a plate or utensils. These flatbreads were especially popular with workers needing a quick meal that traveled well, and families often made extra to freeze for busy days. In the 1970s, they appeared at community fairs and church gatherings where the smell of sizzling bread and spicy greens drew long lines. Each bite carried the bold flavor of southern fields and the resourcefulness of cooks who knew how to turn simple garden harvests into unforgettable lunches that satisfied hunger and sparked conversation alike. Honey butter sweet corn on the cob was the highlight of countless summer festivals and neighborhood block parties, celebrated for its sticky sweetness and smoky finish. Fresh ears of corn were brushed with melted butter mixed with honey and a pinch of salt, then wrapped tightly in foil and set over open grills until the kernels grew tender and lightly charred. When unwrapped, the steam carried a fragrance that blended roasted corn and warm honey into an aroma impossible to resist. Children and adults alike lined up for these simple treats, which required nothing more than a napkin and an eager appetite. In the 1970s, farmers' markets and county fairs featured entire stalls dedicated to this dish, and families recreated it at home for backyard lunches and late-night snacks. The combination of natural corn sweetness and rich honey butter needed no extra seasoning, proving that the best festival food often relied on pure, fresh ingredients and a little patience over the fire. One bite, and the world slowed into pure summer delight. Barbecue. Rib-tip sandwiches turned an inexpensive cut of meat into a smoky masterpiece that defined roadside dining during the decade. Rib tips were seasoned with a dry rub of paprika, garlic, and black pepper before being slow cooked over smoldering hickory until the meat turned tender and the edges caramelized. The juicy pieces were chopped and piled onto thick slices of soft white bread or sturdy rolls that soaked up the sweet and tangy sauce. These sandwiches were sold from small stands along highways where travelers followed the scent of wood smoke long before they saw the hand-painted signs. In the 1970s, they became a lunchtime staple for workers and families who wanted a feast without paying a feast price. Every bite delivered a perfect balance of rich pork and sticky sauce, leaving fingers coated in a glaze that begged to be licked clean. It was proof that great barbecue flavor did not require fancy cuts, only time, care, and a good fire to bring the taste alive. Pickled beet and egg salad added bright color to lunch tables and carried a sweet tang that lingered pleasantly on the tongue. Hard-boiled eggs were sliced and combined with sliced beets that had been pickled in vinegar, sugar, and a touch of clove until they turned a deep crimson hue. The eggs absorbed the rosy brine, creating a marbled effect that made every slice look like a work of art. A light dressing of mayonnaise and mustard balanced the acidity and gave the salad a creamy texture that paired well with simple sandwiches or crusty bread. In the 1970s, this dish appeared frequently in school cafeterias and church suppers, where its jewel-toned presentation caught every eye. It was economical, nourishing, and striking enough to feel festive without requiring expensive ingredients. Children often remembered the way the beets stained their fingers, a small sign that they had enjoyed something both playful and wholesome. This salad proved that everyday lunches could still deliver a touch of elegance and lasting flavor. Smothered pork chop biscuits combined two beloved Southern comforts into a handheld meal that satisfied even the hungriest midday appetite. Pork chops were seasoned with black pepper, dredged in flour, and pan-fried until the crust turned golden. A quick gravy made from the pan drippings, milk, and a pinch of sage was poured over the chops before they were tucked inside warm, flaky biscuits. The gravy soaked into the bread while keeping the meat tender and juicy, creating a sandwich that tasted like Sunday dinner in portable form. Families often made these in the morning and wrapped them in foil so the biscuits would stay soft until lunchtime. In the 1970s, they were a favorite at roadside diners and church bake sales where the smell of sizzling pork lured people in from blocks away. Each bite offered a harmony of buttery biscuit, savory gravy, and hearty pork that felt both indulgent and perfectly familiar, a reminder of the kitchens where love and practicality met on every plate. Creole tomato and rice soup brought the taste of Louisiana gardens to light summer lunches, proving that a simple bowl of soup could be refreshing rather than heavy. Ripe Creole tomatoes were simmered with onions, garlic, and green peppers until they released their juices and created a naturally rich broth. Cooked rice was stirred in just before serving, giving the soup gentle body without weighing it down. A sprinkle of fresh basil and a dash of cayenne added depth and a hint of heat. In the 1970s, this soup became a favorite for midday breaks when the weather was too hot for meatier stews. Families often prepared it early in the morning so the flavors could meld while the house stayed cool. Served with a slice of crusty bread, it offered a bright, garden-fresh taste that satisfied without effort. Each spoonful captured the rhythm of Southern summer kitchens where tomatoes were treasured and nothing tasted better than a dish made straight from the backyard harvest of the day. Peach and cane syrup. Hand pies brought portable sweetness to lunch pails and picnic baskets, wrapping the flavor of ripe fruit in a golden crust. Juicy peaches were sliced and tossed with dark cane syrup and a sprinkle of nutmeg, then sealed inside rounds of flaky pastry. Baked until the crust turned crisp and caramelized at the edges, the pies released a perfume of warm fruit that tempted anyone nearby. They were small enough to eat without utensils, yet rich enough to feel like a full dessert, making them ideal for school children and factory workers alike. In the 1970s, these hand pies traveled from church bake sales to summer fairs, where their sticky sweetness drew long lines and happy smiles. Families baked them on weekends to slip into Monday lunches, knowing the flavor only deepened overnight. Each bite carried the deep Southern tradition of pairing stone fruit with dark syrup, offering a taste of home that could be enjoyed anywhere from a park bench to a bustling assembly line. Fried okra poboys transformed a simple vegetable into the star of a sandwich that rivaled any seafood creation. Fresh okra slices were dusted in seasoned cornmeal and fried until crisp, then heaped onto a soft baguette, still warm from the oven. A generous smear of spicy remoulade added a creamy heat that played perfectly with the crunchy okra. Lettuce and tomato provided cool contrast, while the bread absorbed just enough oil to keep every bite indulgent. In the 1970s, these po' boys became a popular alternative to traditional fried shrimp or oyster versions, especially in neighborhoods where okra grew plentifully in backyard gardens. Street vendors wrapped them in parchment for easy eating on the go, and families recreated them at home for casual lunches or late-night snacks. The sandwich captured the ingenuity of cooks who could elevate a humble crop into something unforgettable. It remains a mouth-watering memory for anyone who tasted the way crisp okra and bold sauce came together between two slices of soft bread. Sweet potato pound cake. Slices brought a touch of homemade dessert to school cafeterias and factory lunchrooms, wrapping the flavor of autumn into every moist crumb. Mashed sweet potatoes blended with butter, sugar, and warm spices created a dense, tender cake that stayed fresh for days. Bakers poured the batter into loaf pans, letting the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg fill the kitchen as the cake baked to a deep golden hue. Once cooled, thick slices were wrapped in wax paper and packed into lunchboxes where they held their shape without crumbling. In the 1970s, these slices became a beloved treat for children and adults who wanted something sweet that traveled well and felt like a gift from home. They paired perfectly with a cup of coffee or a simple glass of milk, offering comfort with every bite. Each slice carried the memory of family kitchens where ovens worked steadily and sweet potatoes brought both nutrition and pure happiness to the middle of an ordinary day. Tell us which lunch you're craving. Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe so we can keep the 70s flavor party rolling.